I wasn't even sure those places ever existed. And what I found in my anthropology classes is that my Christian friend was right, and the Book of Mormon was wrong.
The biblical world, as reflected in the scriptures, is matched by the plants and the trees, and we know these.
Figs, almonds, palm trees, wheat, barley.
When I read the New Testament, I see the relationship between Jesus and his world as one that represents accurately the types of animals that we find in the ancient Near East.
The animals that are mentioned in the Bible still do exist today. It's true that some are no longer existing here, such as lions, but we have explorers centuries ago that speak of these. There's no doubt, even if they don't exist today, that they did exist in antiquity.
The Book of Mormon describes how Lehi's sons explore the land after their arrival in the Americas. 1 Nephi 18 says, "There were beasts in the forest of every kind, both the cow and the ox and the ass and the horse and the goat." 2 Nephi 12:7 says, "The land is also full of horses." And the Book of Mormon describes the use of horse-drawn chariots during massive battles involving tens of thousands of warriors. The Book of Mormon also records other aspects of the culture, including its agriculture. In Mosiah chapter 9 it says, "They began to till the ground with seeds of wheat and barley."
We would expect to find remnants of the types of plants and animals that they raised. Instead, what we find are turkeys and llamas and dogs. We find corn and beans and squash. What we see in the Book of Mormon are all the wrong plants, things like wheat and barley in ancient America. We don't see wheat here. We don't see cattle, sheep, goats.
No horses during Book of Mormon times, no elephants during Book of Mormon times, completely absent.
The Mayas didn't have beasts of burden. They didn't have horses, for example.
The first time we saw a horse, as far as we know, was when a white man rode a horse from Albany up here in 1677.
So the stories of riding horses into battle could not have occurred in the Americas.
Both the Nephites and Jaredites are said to have processed ores and worked with many kinds of metal. 1 Nephi 18:25 says that Lehi's family did find all manner of ore, both gold and silver, and of copper.
We don't find the use of metals like gold, copper in metallurgic terms, like you see described in the Book of Mormon with references to bellows and other tools of metallurgy.
The Book of Mormon specifically stated that there was steel in the New World. It's very easy to find the places where the steel is smelted. Even if you don't find the steel objects, not a single site has been found that can be said, yes, steel was smelted here.
And what is really surprising about the Maya is the fact that they didn't use metal.
It is the lack of specific types of metal in the Americas that poses a serious problem for the Book of Mormon account, which claims that both the Jaredites and Nephites used metal armor and weapons in their warfare, metal coins for their currency, and are even described as using metal plates to write on. The heading under chapter 19 in 1 Nephi states that Nephi makes plates of ore and records the history of his people. Helaman 3:15 describes the Nephite writings, saying, "There are many books and many records of every kind, and they have been kept chiefly by the Nephites."
One of the things that is said about the Nephites is that they were a culture with writing. Now, a culture with writing leaves records. And if that number of people did not leave a record, well, I don't think they existed.
And other records and accountings say that there were just, hundreds or thousands of plates and records of the people.
The idea that there could have been an empire that lasted for 1,000 years, that claimed to be literate, and for there to be no historical trace at all is extremely far-fetched.
Any indication that the ancient Americans between 600 BC and 400 AD wrote on metal plates?
No.
Ancient writings have been found from all of the empires that surrounded the kingdom of Israel, but none so abundant as the biblical manuscripts that have been found coming from the Israelites themselves.
The earliest known part of the Bible to have been preserved in archaeology is a short passage from Numbers chapter 6 verses 24 to 26 that was discovered by Gabriel Barkai.
In an excavation which I directed here in Jerusalem, we found two small tiny silver plaques. They carry in the ancient Hebrew script the oldest biblical verses that we own. They come from this very period, the 7th century BC.
Well, here we've climbed up the mountain in Qumran, and this is cave number 1. This is where the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in 1947.
Every single book of the Old Testament, apart from possibly the book of Esther, is found in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
And so now we have copies of the Old Testament books from the Dead Sea Scrolls from 200 to 100 BC.
For the Greek New Testament, we have around 5,500 manuscripts that's containing part or all of the Greek New Testament.
So we've got plenty of evidence for the Greek Gospels, for the Greek letters in the New Testament that go way, way back to very early on, to only a matter of a few decades after they were first written.
By contrast, we have no ancient copy of the Book of Mormon.
We have manuscript evidence that's almost 2,000 years old for the New Testament and over 2,000 years old for the Old Testament. For the Book of Mormon, I am not aware of any manuscript evidence at all.
But with the Book of Mormon, we have no documentary trail. We do not have texts that we can go to until 1830. Between the events in the Book of Mormon, which supposedly ended in 400 AD, and the first documentary trace is 1,400 years before we find any sort of documentary trace. What this suggests to me is that the book itself was constructed in the 19th century. Where are the documents? Where's the history that we find ample, abundant when we're dealing with the Bible? Why don't we find it with the Book of Mormon too?
If you had the textual support of ancient documents for the Book of Mormon that say the Bible has, would you have lost faith in the Book of Mormon?
That's a good question. I mean, Kien Sabe. Who knows? It would certainly help the situation if the Book of Mormon had a documentary trail and artifacts that would support its claims. It would certainly, we might be able to refer to it then as a historical document.
The Book of Mormon states in Mormon 9:32 that the language used in ancient America by the Nephites was called Reformed Egyptian.
And that's what it says in the Book of Mormon, that they wrote in Reformed Egyptian.
Would a Hebrew around about 600 BC know how to write in the ancient Reformed Egyptian?
What's ancient Reformed Egyptian?
Linguists and others will state that they've never heard of Reformed Egyptian, unless they're Mormon. And the reason why the mainstream linguists don't have anything to say about it is because it's a fictional language.